My name is Lauren Miller. I'm 32. My dad left me alone overnight when I was 10, and when I finally told him years later how scared I'd been, he laughed and said, "You were fine." Last week, he called me crying. I was standing in the grocery store parking lot, keys in my hand, staring at my phone because I'd missed the call. It was late enough that the store lights were harsh and the carts were rattling back into their rows. I could see my reflection in the windshield. Hair pulled back too tight, jaw clenched without meaning to. There was a voicemail. I didn't play it right away. I never do. I slid into the driver's seat and shut the door like I always do, the familiar thud sealing out the world. My phone buzzed again, then went still. I set my purse on the passenger seat and sat there with my hands on the steering wheel, breathing through my nose. When I pressed play, his voice filled the car. He said my name the way he used to when I was little, slower, softer, like he was checking to see if I was still there. "Lauren," he said, "I don't know who else to call." I felt something drop low in my stomach, like I'd missed a step in the dark. People walked past my car with grocery bags, and kids tugging at their sleeves. Somewhere nearby, a cart banged into another cart. I turned the volume down, but not all the way. His voice still spilled out, thin and shaky. "I messed up," he said. "I just need you for a minute. H. Herr de Ficker." I ended the message before he could say anything else. At home, I put the groceries away the same way I always do. Milk on the top shelf, apples in the left drawer. I lined the cans up so the labels faced out. My phone stayed on the counter, screen dark, like it was asleep. This is how it's always been with him. He drops something heavy in my lap and waits for me to pick it up. When I was 10, my job was to be easy. That night comes back to me in pieces, not like a movie, more like snapshots I didn't ask to keep. The living room lamp still on. The TV muted. The clock above the doorway ticking loud enough that I kept checking to see if it was broken. He told me he'd be back before I went to bed. He said it like it was no big deal, like he was running to the gas station. He stood in the doorway tying his shoes while I sat cross-legged on the carpet, folding and unfolding the corner of a magazine. "You've got snacks," he said, "and the dog. You'll be fine." I remember watching his taillights disappear down the street. I remember locking the front door because I thought that was what I was supposed to do. I remember the house sounding different without him in it. Every little noise felt louder. The fridge kicking on made me jump. The dog barked once and then went quiet. I stayed up until the numbers on the clock changed twice, then 3 times. I didn't cry because I thought crying would make it worse somehow, like it would prove I couldn't handle it. When he finally came back the next morning, the sun was already up. He smelled like coffee and cold air. He ruffled my hair and said, "See? No problem." I nodded. I always nodded. That was the start of it. Being the kid who didn't need much. The one who didn't complain. The one who learned early that fear was inconvenient. Years later, when I tried to tell him what that night did to me, we were sitting at his kitchen table. There was a cereal bowl between us, with milk drying along the edges. He laughed, actually laughed, and waved his hand like he was brushing away a fly. "You were fine," he said. "You always were." I stopped trying after that. Now, standing in my kitchen, with the refrigerator door open and cold air on my ankles, I played the voicemail again. This time, I listened all the way through. His breathing was uneven. There was a pause where I could tell he'd pulled the phone away and then brought it back. "I don't know what to do," he said. I need help." I closed the fridge and leaned my back against it. The hum of it vibrated through my shoulders. I stared at the ceiling and waited for the old reflex to kick in. The one that says, "Fix it, make it better. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." Instead, I thought about the girl on the living room floor, counting seconds and pretending not to be scared. I thought about how many times I'd swallowed something sharp so he wouldn't have to. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, then another buzz, same number. I didn't pick it up. I set the phone face down on the counter and went to wash my hands, scrubbing longer than necessary. The water ran hot, then hotter. My hands shook a little, then steadied. When I turned the water off, the house was quiet. Too quiet, maybe. My phone buzzed again. The phone kept buzzing while I stood there with wet hands and no towel. I let it buzz until it stopped on its own. I didn't read the texts right away. I knew what they would say. A variation of the same thing he's always said when things tilt out of his control. Just a minute. Please. I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important. I dried my hands on my jeans and finally picked the phone up. 3 messages. All from him. No punctuation. Like he was typing fast. Call me. Lauren, please. I'm really not okay. I set the phone back down and leaned against the counter. The kitchen light was too bright, so I switched it off and let the room go dim, except for the glow from the stove clock. The numbers read later than I'd realized. This is what it used to feel like. Waiting. Holding my breath for something I couldn't control. That night, when I was 10, after the clock changed for the 3rd time, I went and checked the front door again. I pressed my ear against it, convinced I'd missed the sound of his car. The wood felt cold on my cheek. Outside, the street was empty. I locked it again, even though it was already locked. I didn't turn off the lamp because the corners of the room looked wrong in the dark. The dog stayed curled up on the rug, breathing slow, not worried at all. I sat on the couch with my knees pulled to my chest, listening to the house make noises I'd never noticed before. The ice maker dropped cubes, pipes knocked somewhere behind the walls. Each sound landed heavy, then faded. I told myself he was just late. Adults were late all the time. That didn't mean anything was wrong. I checked the clock again. In the morning, I woke up on the couch with the TV still on. A cartoon paused on a frozen smile. My neck hurt. The sunlight coming through the window made everything feel exposed. When he came in, he acted surprised to see me there, like I'd chosen it. "You didn't go to bed?" he asked, opening the fridge. I shook my head. He shrugged. "Well, you made it." That was it. No apology. No explanation that made sense to a kid. Just a quiet message that the fear was mine to manage. Standing in my dark kitchen now, I realized my shoulders were up around my ears. I dropped them on purpose and took a breath that felt too big for my chest. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a call. His name lit up the screen. I watched it ring until it stopped. A minute later, another voicemail icon appeared. I didn't play it. Instead, I walked into the living room and sat on the edge of the couch. The same posture, knees drawn in, hands tucked under my arms. I hadn't noticed I was doing it until I was already there. My dad has always been good at framing things like challenges. Tests you either pass or fail. When I was little, it was staying quiet, staying calm, staying small, being the kid he could leave and come back to without consequences. When I was older, it was listening to his problems without bringing up my own, letting him vent about jobs and girlfriends and money like I was his peer, not his daughter. "You're tough," he'd say. "You can handle it." I used to think that was a compliment. My phone vibrated against the coffee table, a low hum that felt louder in the quiet room. I flipped it face down without looking. For a second, guilt flared hot and fast. What if this time was different? What if something was really wrong? What kind of person ignores a crying parent? Then, another memory surfaced, uninvited. Me, at the kitchen table a few years ago, finally trying to explain. My voice careful. My words chosen like they were fragile. "I was scared that night," I said. "You left me alone." He snorted and shook his head. "You're still on that?" The cereal bowl sat between us, spoon clinking against ceramic as he ate. Milk ringed the edges, drying white. "You're fine," he said again. The certainty in his voice shut me down faster than anger ever could. Back in my apartment, I picked up my phone and turned it over. No new messages yet. Just the missed call, and the voicemail icon stacked there, waiting. I thought about calling Emily. It was late, but she wouldn't mind. She never does. Instead, I opened my notes app and stared at a blank screen. I didn't know what I was going to write. I just needed somewhere for the noise in my head to land. I typed one line and stopped. "He left me and said I'd be fine." I read it back and felt my throat tighten. My phone buzzed again, sharp this time. A text from a number I didn't recognize. "This is Rachel. Please call your father." My stomach sank. I didn't answer Rachel right away. I stared at her message until the screen dimmed, then tapped it awake again. Her name felt heavy there, like something I hadn't agreed to carry. She married my dad when I was already grown. She'd never known me as a kid. Only as the quiet adult daughter who sent birthday cards on time and didn't ask for much. I set the phone down and went to the window. Outside, the parking lot was almost empty. One car idled near the curb, headlights on, waiting for someone who wasn't coming yet. That waiting feeling crept back into my chest. When I was 10, the worst part wasn't the fear. It was the thinking. The endless loop of questions with no answers. Did he forget? Did something happen? Was I supposed to call someone? Would I get in trouble if I did? There was a phone on the kitchen wall back then. Beige. Long cord twisted into knots. I remember standing under it, staring up, knowing I wasn't supposed to use it unless it was an emergency. I didn't know if being scared counted. So I sat back down. The next day at school, I didn't tell anyone. I slid into my desk like always, backpack thumping against the chair. My teacher smiled and asked if everyone had a good night. I nodded with the rest of them. At recess, I sat on the swings and dragged my shoes through the dirt. A girl I barely knew asked why I was so quiet. "I'm just tired," I said. It was true, just not the whole truth. That became my answer for years. Back in the present, I finally picked up my phone and typed back to Rachel. He called. I heard the voicemail. 3 dots appeared almost immediately. "He's really struggling," she wrote. "He needs you." There it was. Not a question. A statement. Like it was already decided. I felt something tighten in my jaw. I could hear my dad's voice behind her words. The same assumption. That I would step in. That I always would. I didn't respond. Instead, I walked into my bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed. The lamp on my nightstand cast a soft circle of light, leaving the corners dark. I focused on small things. The wrinkle in the comforter. The loose thread on the pillowcase. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Rachel. "He hasn't been sleeping." That one landed differently. It wasn't a demand. It was a detail. An attempt to pull me closer. For a second, I almost typed back. Almost asked what was going on. Almost slipped into the role without noticing. Then I remembered sitting on the couch at 10, eyes burning, forcing myself to stay awake because sleeping felt dangerous. No one had checked if I slept that night. I set the phone face down on the bed and lay back, staring at the ceiling. My heart was beating faster than it needed to. I counted the breaths until it slowed. When I flipped the phone back over, there was a missed call. Not from my dad. From Emily. I let it ring twice before answering. "Hey," I said, my voice coming out thinner than I expected. "I saw your text," she said. "Are you okay?" That question undid me more than the voicemail had. I pressed my lips together and nodded, even though she couldn't see me. "He left me alone when I was 10, I said finally. "And now he's falling apart." There was a pause on the line, not awkward, just steady. "You don't owe him your nervous system," Emily said. I laughed once, sharp and surprised. That's one way to put it. She didn't rush me, she never does. She let the silence sit until I filled it. "I feel like if I don't call him back, I'm doing something wrong," I said. "You're not," she said. "You're just not rescuing him." After we hung up, the apartment felt quieter, but not in the bad way. More like a held breath finally let out. I checked my phone one more time before bed. No new messages. No new calls. Just the voicemail icon sitting there, waiting. The next morning, I woke up before my alarm. Sunlight pushed through the blinds in thin stripes, landing across the wall and the edge of my dresser. For a few seconds, I didn't remember why my chest felt tight. Then I rolled onto my side and saw my phone on the nightstand. 3 missed calls, all from my dad, all between midnight and 5 in the morning. There was also one new voicemail. I didn't listen to it yet. I carried my phone into the kitchen and set it next to the coffee maker like it was something fragile. While the water heated, I stood there in socks. staring at the cabinet I still hadn't fixed the hinge on. It had been crooked for months. I kept meaning to get to it. My dad hates unfinished things. Or at least, he hates them when they belong to someone else. When I was a kid, he used to say, "If you're going to do something, do it right." That applied to chores, homework, attitude. It never applied to him leaving in the middle of the night or forgetting promises or deciding I could handle more than I should. The coffee machine clicked and hissed. I poured the mug too full and watched it slosh dangerously close to the rim as I carried it to the table. I finally picked up the phone and played the new voicemail. His voice was hoarse this time, like he'd been crying or not sleeping. Maybe both. "I don't know why you won't answer," he said. "I'm not asking for much. I just need to talk." There was a pause. I could hear him swallow. "I thought you'd understand." That line landed hard. I set the phone down slowly, like any sudden movement might shatter something. My hand was shaking, and I wrapped it around the mug to steady it, even though the coffee was still too hot. Understand. That was always the word he used. Understand why he was late. Understand why money was tight. Understand why he snapped sometimes. Understand why it was easier for him if I didn't make a big deal out of things. Understanding was the price of staying connected. As a kid, it showed up in small ways. Him asking me not to tell my aunt when he forgot to pick me up. Him joking with friends about how independent I was, how I didn't need babysitters like other kids. They'd laugh and look at me like I was impressive. I learned early that being praised felt safer than being protected. I got dressed and went to work anyway. The routine helped. The drive, the same radio station, the same turn into the parking lot behind the clinic. Inside, the air smelled like disinfectant and stale coffee. Karen was already at the front desk, flipping through a clipboard. "You okay?" she asked, not looking up. I hesitated. "Yeah, just tired." "Who fangs care?" She glanced at me then, really looked. "You want me to move your afternoon appointments?" I shook my head too quickly. "No, it's fine." That word again. Between patients, my phone stayed silent. No calls, no texts. The quiet felt suspicious, like the pause before something drops. Around lunch, Rachel texted again. "He's not eating. I don't know what to do." I stared at the screen, my sandwich untouched in its wrapper. The old pull kicked in, sharp and familiar, the urge to fix. To step in so someone else wouldn't have to sit with discomfort. I typed out a response, deleted it, typed another, deleted that too. What I wanted to say was simple. I heard him. I just wasn't coming. Instead, I locked my phone and put it face down on the table. That afternoon, between filing insurance forms and answering phones, a memory surfaced that I hadn't thought about in years. I was 13. He'd forgotten to come home again, later than he said he would be. I'd microwaved dinner for myself and done my homework at the kitchen table. When he finally walked in, I said, "You said 8. He frowned, like I'd inconvenienced him. "Why are you making this a thing?" I apologized without thinking. Sitting at my desk now, I felt something twist in my chest. Not sadness, not even anger. Recognition. My phone buzzed once as I was closing out for the day. One new voicemail. I didn't play it. The silence didn't last. It never does. I was halfway home when my phone rang again, vibrating in the cup holder so hard it rattled against my keys. His name flashed on the screen, bright and insistent. I didn't answer. I kept my eyes on the road and my hands steady on the wheel, even though my pulse jumped. The call went to voicemail. A second later, the notification popped up. I pulled into my apartment lot and sat there with the engine still running. The building looked the same as always. Brick. 2 lights out on the second floor, someone's curtains half open. Nothing about my life looked like an emergency. I turned the car off and listened to the quiet click as the engine cooled. Then I played the message. "Lauren," he said, sounding annoyed now. Less fragile, more familiar. There it was. The word hung in the air long after he stopped talking. I shut the car door harder than I meant to and went upstairs, taking the steps 2 at a time. Inside, I dropped my bag by the door and leaned against it, the wood cool through my jacket. I was 10 years old again for a second, listening for footsteps that didn't come. That night, after he didn't come home, I remember standing in the hallway with my backpack on, convinced I'd missed school already even though it was still dark. I didn't know what time meant yet. I just knew something was wrong, and I didn't have the words for it. No one ever asked me later what I did all night. No one checked if I ate, or slept, or cried. They just accepted that I'd handled it. Back in my apartment, I kicked my shoes off and sat on the floor with my back against the couch. My phone lay in my lap, warm from use. I scrolled through the missed calls, counting them before I realized what I was doing. 7. A younger version of me would have felt proud, needed, important. Now it just made me tired. Another text came in from Rachel. He's saying you won't talk to him. This isn't like you. I stared at that sentence until the words blurred. This isn't like you. I thought about how well everyone knew the version of me that absorbed things quietly, the one who smoothed edges, the one who made it easier. Maybe this was exactly like me, just not the version they preferred. I typed back slowly, hands steady. I need space. The reply came fast. He doesn't understand why. I didn't answer. I put my phone on the coffee table and stood up, stretching my arms over my head like I was trying to shake something loose. My body felt wound tight, like it had been bracing for impact all day. I made dinner without much appetite. Pasta, jarred sauce. I ate standing at the counter, staring at nothing. When I was done, I washed the plate right away. I've always done that. Leaving things undone makes me anxious. I wonder where that came from. Later, I sat on the couch and finally let myself play the first voicemail again, the one from the parking lot. This time, I listened differently. I heard the panic, yes. But I also heard something else. Expectation. The assumption that no matter how much time had passed, I would still pick up the emotional weight he dropped. I just need you, he'd said. He never asked if I could. I turned the phone off completely. The screen went black, sudden and final. The quiet that followed felt strange, not peaceful, not yet, but solid. I sat there until the light outside faded and the room went dark around me. And for the first time, I didn't reach for the switch. The grocery store parking lot was fuller this time. I hadn't planned to stop there again. I needed paper towels and cat litter and something easy for dinner, and it was on the way. That was all. But as soon as I pulled in and saw the rows of cars and the automatic doors sliding open and closed, my chest tightened. I parked anyway. I sat with the engine off, hands resting in my lap, phone still powered down in my purse. For a minute, I just watched people. A woman loading bags into the trunk. A kid running ahead of his dad, almost tripping over his own feet. Someone laughing too loud near the carts. Normal life. Happening all around me. I turned my phone back on. It lit up immediately. Notifications stacked on top of each other like they'd been waiting. 2 missed calls, 1 new voicemail, no texts. I didn't think about it anymore. I just hit play. His voice came through the car speakers louder than I expected, filling the space before I could turn it down. "I'm scared," he said. The word landed heavy and undeniable. I fumbled with the volume, turning it lower, but not off. A couple walking past glanced toward my car, then away. Heat crept up my neck. "I don't know how I let things get this bad," he went on. I stared straight ahead, jaw tight, fingers curled into the fabric of my coat. "I didn't mean to mess things up with you," he said. I need someone." A cart clanged behind me. Someone slammed a trunk. The world kept moving while his voice stayed with me, thin and exposed. For a moment, I felt the old instinct surge. The urge to open the door, get out of the car, call him back right there. Handle it, smooth it over. Make the discomfort stop. Instead, I sat still. I noticed how his fear sounded different from mine had all those years ago. He had options. A wife in the house, a phone in his hand, a lifetime of being believed. I had been 10, alone, guessing. I ended the message and rested my forehead against the steering wheel. The leather was cool. My breath fogged the small space between us. People were close enough now that I knew they could hear pieces of it. His voice had leaked out. His weakness. Not enough for context, but enough to feel exposed. I realized something then that surprised me. I wasn't embarrassed for him. I was clear. I sat up and checked the missed calls. All from him, all close together, no gaps. Panic stacked on panic. I thought about calling Emily, but I didn't need to talk it through this time. I already knew what I was going to do. Nothing. I stayed in the car until the parking lot thinned and the sky darkened. When I finally went inside, I moved slowly, deliberately. I chose my things without rushing. I waited in line behind a man counting change, not irritated, just present. Back home, I put the groceries away and left the phone on the counter. Screen up, volume on. I wanted to know if it rang. It didn't. Instead, a text came through from Rachel. He says you listened to the voicemail. Why won't you talk to him? An intelligible. I leaned against the counter and read it twice. My reflection in the microwave door looked tired, but steady. I typed back one sentence. I'm not the person he should lean on right now. The reply came fast. Then who is? I set the phone down and walked away from it. Behind me, the screen lit up again. I didn't sleep much that night. Every time I drifted off, my body jerked awake, like it was waiting for something to happen. I lay on my back staring at the ceiling, listening to the quiet sounds of the building. Someone's TV through the wall. Pipes ticking. A door closing somewhere down the hall. At 3 a.m, my phone lit up again. This time, it was a call. I watched it ring, my dad's name bright against the dark room. I let it stop on its own. A few seconds later, the voicemail icon appeared. I sat up and swung my legs over the side of the bed. My feet found the floor, cold and grounding. I picked up the phone and played it. His voice was different again. Tighter, controlled. I don't know what's going on with you, he said. Rachel's worried. I'm worried. You're acting like I did something wrong. I felt my mouth go dry. I don't remember leaving you alone like you keep saying, he continued. And even if I did, you're blowing it way out of proportion. There it was. The denial landed clean and sharp, like a door slamming. You were fine, he said again. You always were. I ended the message before he finished the sentence. My hand was shaking now, but not from fear. From clarity. I walked into the kitchen and turned the light on. The sudden brightness made me squint. I set the phone on the counter and stared at it, like it might start talking on its own. This was the part I'd been bracing for without realizing it. The moment where his need flipped into accusation, where my silence became the problem. When I was a kid, this was where I always folded. I remembered being 14, trying to tell him I didn't like when he yelled. The way he laughed then, too. The way he said, I guess I'm just the worst father in the world, until I rushed to take it back. I didn't take it back this time. I poured a glass of water and drank it slowly, feeling it settle in my stomach. My reflection in the window looked older than I felt, but steadier too. My phone buzzed. A text from Rachel. He's really hurt. He says he doesn't know what he did to deserve this. I stared at the words until my vision blurred. Deserve. I typed a response and erased it. Typed another. Erased that too. What I wanted to say was that this wasn't new. That I'd been carrying it since I was 10. That him not remembering didn't erase what happened. Instead, I locked the phone and set it face down. I went back to bed, but I didn't lie down. I sat there, elbows on my knees, breathing slow until my heart stopped racing. When morning came, it felt inevitable. The sun rose, the room filled with light. My phone stayed quiet. And for the first time, I understood something I hadn't let myself believe before. He wasn't confused. He just didn't want the story to change. I didn't answer any calls that day. I went to work, did my job, nodded at the right moments. I filed charts, answered phones, refilled the printer paper. My hands moved automatically, like they'd learned how to keep going without my permission. Inside, something had shifted. At lunch, I sat in my car instead of the break room. I didn't turn the radio on. I just sat there with the windows cracked, listening to distant traffic and the click of the cooling engine. I played the voicemail again. Not the angry one, the first one. The one where his voice had cracked. I don't know who else to call. I listened, like it was evidence, not a plea. Like something I was allowed to examine instead of immediately responding to. There was fear there, yes. But there was also a pattern, the same one I'd lived inside my whole life. Something goes wrong. He reaches for me. I steady it. He moves on. The difference now was that I could see it. I thought about the girl I'd been, sitting under the beige kitchen phone, trying to decide if being scared counted as an emergency. I thought about how many times I'd learned the answer was no. My phone buzzed with a new text. Rachel again. He keeps replaying the night you won't talk about, she wrote. He says he feels like a failure. Failure. The word sat there, heavy and manipulative all at once. I could almost hear my dad's voice behind it, rehearsed and wounded. I didn't respond. After work, I drove home slowly, taking the longer route without thinking about it. The sky was low and gray, the kind of afternoon that makes everything feel muted. When I got home, I kicked my shoes off and left them by the door. I didn't clean up. I didn't cook. I didn't distract myself. I sat on the couch and let the quiet exist. At some point, my phone rang again. I didn't look at the screen this time. I just watched it vibrate on the coffee table, buzzing itself tired. When it stopped, I picked it up and turned it face down. That was the decision. Not dramatic, not announced, just a quiet understanding settling into place. I wasn't going to explain myself anymore. Later that night, I opened my notes app again. I added to the line I'd written before. He left me and said I'd be fine. I was 10. I was scared. That counts. I read it back and felt something loosen in my chest. Outside, a car door slammed. Someone laughed. Life went on, unaware of the small, private line I'd drawn. My phone lit up one last time before bed. Another voicemail. I didn't listen. The missed calls stacked up while I slept. I didn't see them until morning, when I reached for my phone out of habit and felt the weight of it in my hand. Notifications lined the screen. Calls, voicemails, texts, all clustered together like they'd been pacing. I didn't open any of them. Instead, I made coffee and stood by the sink while it brewed, watching steam fog the window. My reflection looked calmer than I expected. Tired, yes, but not cracked open. On my way to work, I passed the elementary school I'd gone to as a kid. I don't usually take that route. Traffic must have been rerouted or something. The yellow sign flashed "School Zone," and a crossing guard stepped out into the street. I slowed and waited. Kids streamed past with backpacks too big for their bodies, lunchboxes swinging. One girl clutched her dad's hand, dragging her feet like she didn't want to go in yet. He bent down, said something I couldn't hear, and she nodded. My throat tightened. I wondered what she'd remember about him later. The tone of his voice. Whether he came back when he said he would. At work, Karen handed me a stack of files and said, "You sure you don't want to leave early?" I almost said no automatically. The word hovered on my tongue. Then I shook my head. "Actually, yeah, I think I do." She nodded, like that was the most normal thing in the world. Driving home before noon felt strange. Like skipping class without permission. The streets were quieter. The light harsher. At home, I dropped my bag and sat on the floor with my back against the couch again. Same spot, different posture. My legs stretched out this time. I picked up my phone and opened the voicemail list. There were 9 now. I scrolled past them without pressing play and opened my messages instead. Rachel had sent 3 more. "He's asking what he did wrong. He says you're punishing him. This is hurting him more than you realize." I read them once. Something in me hardened, not in a bitter way, in a clean way. I typed back carefully. "I'm not punishing him. I'm protecting myself." The reply took longer than usual. "That feels cruel," she finally wrote. I set the phone down and stared at the wall. A small crack ran from the corner of the window frame down toward the baseboard. I'd never noticed it before. Krell. I thought about the 10-year-old version of me sitting awake all night, afraid to cry too loud in case someone heard. Afraid to sleep. Afraid to move. No one had called that cruel. I stood up and went to the bedroom. I pulled a blanket out of the closet and wrapped it around my shoulders even though it wasn't cold. The weight helped. My phone buzzed again. This time, a call from my dad. I let it ring. When it stopped, I turned the phone off. Not airplane mode. The screen went black, final, and quiet. I lay back on the bed and closed my eyes, heart pounding, waiting for the wave of guilt to crash. It didn't. What came instead was grief. Clean and sharp and honest. And underneath it, something steadier. Relief. The first message came through Rachel. It showed up on my laptop while I was checking email. A small banner sliding down from the top of the screen like it didn't know it was carrying something heavy. He can't get through to you. Please just talk to him. I stared at it longer than I meant to. I'd forgotten she could reach me that way. I closed the email without responding and sat back in my chair. The apartment was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic outside. Afternoon light stretched across the floor, catching dust I hadn't bothered to sweep yet. My phone stayed off on the counter. I hadn't turned it back on since yesterday. An hour later, another email. He's spiraling. He keeps saying he doesn't know what he did wrong. The phrasing was familiar now. A chorus I'd heard my whole life, just in different keys. I typed out a response, deleted it, typed another. What I wanted to say was that not knowing wasn't the same as not doing. That forgetting didn't undo impact. That confusion wasn't innocence. Instead, I wrote one line. I've explained before, I'm not doing it again. I hit send before I could overthink it. 10 minutes passed, then 20. My phone stayed dark. No buzzing, no ringing. For a moment, I felt almost foolish for bracing so hard. Like maybe this was it. Then the knock came. It wasn't loud, just firm. 2 quick taps, then a pause. My heart jumped anyway. I stood up slowly and walked to the door. I didn't look through the peephole at first. I just stood there with my hand on the knob, breathing in and out, grounding myself in the cool metal under my palm. Another knock. "Lauren," Rachel's voice said softly through the door. "It's me." I closed my eyes. I hadn't expected her to show up. She lived across town. She hated confrontation. Or at least, she said she did. I opened the door. A crack. She stood there with her purse clutched to her chest, hair pulled back like she'd rushed. Her eyes flicked past me into the apartment, scanning for something. Or someone. "He's not okay," she said immediately. I didn't know what else to do. I didn't invite her in. I stepped out into the hallway and pulled the door shut behind me. The click echoed louder than it should have. "What's going on?" she asked. "He's crying all the time. He says you won't talk to him." I leaned back against the door, feeling its solid presence at my spine. "I heard him," I said. "That doesn't mean I have to fix it." She shook her head, frustrated. "You're being really hard right now." The words stung, even though I'd expected them. "I was 10, I said quietly. "And I was alone all night." She opened her mouth, then closed it again. "He says he doesn't remember that," she said finally. "I know," I said. "That's the problem." The hallway felt too narrow. The air stale. Rachel sighed and rubbed her forehead. "He's your dad." I nodded. "I know." She waited, like there was more coming. There wasn't. After a moment, she stepped back. "I don't know how to help him if you won't." I watched her walk down the hall toward the stairs, heels clicking softly against the floor. When she turned the corner and disappeared, I unlocked my door and went back inside. My phone was still off on the counter. I left it there. The night passed without interruption. No buzzing, no knocking, no new messages slipping through some forgotten channel. I slept deeper than I had in days. When I woke up, the room was gray with early light. Rain tapped softly against the window, steady and unhurried. For a moment, I lay still, waiting for the familiar spike of anxiety. The quick mental inventory. Missed calls. Damage control. It didn't come. I reached for my phone and turned it on. Nothing exploded. No flood of notifications. Just the home screen, calm and unchanged. There was one voicemail. Time stamped late the night before. I stared at it for a long second, then pressed play. His voice was quieter now. Not panicked. Not angry. Tired. "I don't know what I'm supposed to do if you won't talk to me," he said. "I guess I just thought you'd be there." He paused, breath shaky. "I won't bother you again." I ended the message and set the phone down. I believed him this time. Not because he'd suddenly understood, but because he was finally out of moves. I stood up and went into the bathroom, brushing my teeth slowly, deliberately. I watched myself in the mirror. Same face, same eyes, different posture. After breakfast, I pulled out a box from the closet, the one I'd been avoiding for years. Old papers, childhood photos, things I didn't know what to do with but couldn't throw away. At the bottom was a folded piece of notebook paper, yellowed at the edges. My handwriting. I'd written it the morning after that night. A list, in uneven letters. Feed the dog. Lock the door. Don't fall asleep. I sat on the floor with the paper in my hands until my legs went numb. I didn't feel angry or vindicated. I felt resolved. I folded the paper carefully and put it back in the box. Then I closed the lid and slid it under the bed, not hidden, just stored. My phone buzzed once on the counter. A text from Rachel. "He says he's giving you space." I read it and didn't respond. I spent the rest of the day doing ordinary things. Laundry, dishes, a long walk in the rain without an umbrella. I let myself get soaked, jacket heavy against my shoulders. When I got home, I left the wet clothes in a pile by the door. I'd deal with them later. That night, I turned my phone off again. Not because I was afraid of it ringing. Because I didn't need it. The morning felt ordinary. Sunlight crept through the blinds and landed on the floor in soft rectangles. The rain had washed the air clean overnight, and when I cracked the window, it smelled like wet pavement and leaves. Somewhere down the block, a truck idled and then pulled away. I stood in the kitchen with a mug warming my hands and realized I wasn't bracing for anything. No waiting for a call. No rehearsing what I'd say. No knot in my chest. Just quiet. I turned my phone on and set it on the counter. The screen lit up. No missed calls. No voicemails. No new messages. It stayed that way. I thought about my dad, probably sitting at his kitchen table, phone nearby, learning how silence feels on the other side. I didn't imagine him collapsing or falling apart. I imagined him uncomfortable, uncertain. I let that be his. I went for a walk before work, something I never do on weekdays. The sidewalks were still damp, and my shoes left faint prints behind me. A woman jogged past with headphones in. Someone watered their plants, hose arcing through the air. Life. Moving forward. As I passed the park, I saw a little girl sitting on a bench with her backpack at her feet. Her dad stood in front of her, crouched down to her eye level. He said something, and she nodded, then leaned forward and hugged him hard around the neck. He hugged her back just as tightly. I didn't feel jealous. I felt clear. At work, Karen waved me into her office and asked how I was doing. I told her the truth. "Better," I said. She smiled like she believed me. That afternoon, my phone buzzed once. A text from an unfamiliar number. "My dad. I'm going to get some help," he wrote. "I'm sorry for what I can remember. I'll leave you alone." I stared at the message for a long moment. My thumb hovered over the screen. Then I locked the phone. Not out of anger. Not out of fear. Out of choice. I went home, made dinner, and ate it sitting at the table instead of standing at the counter. I washed the dishes and left the cabinet hinge unfixed. Some things didn't need immediate attention. Before bed, I pulled the notebook from my nightstand and added one more line beneath the others. "I don't have to be fine to be safe." I closed it and turned off the light. The phone stayed quiet. And this time, that was exactly how I wanted it.